Okay, here's our topic you see on the screen. It's a nice topic, very significant for sadhakas. You have to be able to look at the screen, though. You're okay, but if you're saying looking at me but not looking at that, you're going to miss. Okay. Mutually supportive roles of Srinam and Srimad Bhagavatam. You'll see this same image at the very end. There's the Bhagavatam at the bottom and the Hare Krishna mantra at the top, and they're mutually supportive. As we know, in Nectar of Devotion, there is a statement that of the 64 items of devotional service, 5 are most potent, and 2 of those 5 are our topic, the Holy Name and Srimad Bhagavatam. So now we're going to hear some glorification of both. First, the Holy Name. This is a verse from Antya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Of the 9 processes of devotional service, the most important is to always chant the holy name of the Lord. If one does so, avoiding the 10 kinds of offenses, one very easily obtains the most valuable love of Godhead. So the importance of chanting the holy name. Then the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam. From the final chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, this Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy, because its subject matter is the absolute truth, which, while non-different from the spirit soul, is the ultimate reality, one without a second. The goal of this literature is exclusive devotional service unto that supreme truth. So the holy name, its importance, and Srimad Bhagavatam, its importance. And they're mutually important. It's a nice graphic here showing some steps leading to Radha and Krishna. Along the side is Lord Chaitanya, who seems to have fainted in ecstasy as he's approached Radha and Krishna. The power of these 5 principles, that's the 5 types of devotional service, is very wonderful and difficult to understand, even without faith in them. A person who is offenseless can awaken his dormant love of Krishna simply by being a little connected with them. And another nice graphic, there's the 2 at the bottom, the Hare Krishna mantra and the Srimad Bhagavatam, and they're mutually supportive. And the stairway, as you see, it leads to Krishna. So if you want to reach Krishna, these 2 are most especially helpful. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said 2 things. Always discuss Srimad Bhagavatam and constantly chant the holy name of Lord Krishna. In this way you'll be able to attain liberation very easily. And you'll be elevated to the enjoyment of love of Godhead. So these 2 things are important, and they're mutually supportive. Now we're going to hear some special glories of the holy name. There's zillions of them, but we're going to be focusing on what the Srimad Bhagavatam says about the holy name. And there's many, many, many such references. Here's one from 11th Canto, Chapter 5. This is Narada speaking to Vasudeva in Dwarka. For the conditioned souls wandering in this world There is no greater attainment than Sankirtan, from which one obtains bhakti with mind fixed on the Lord, and by which samsara is destroyed. Paramo labho, the supreme attainment. This is made reference to in Bhakti Sandarbha. So 11th canto, here's one from 1st canto, chapter 1. Living beings who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified. Of course, you recognize the painting, right? It's a Jamila who was being rescued by the Vishnu Dutas. He was being, because of his many sinful activities, he was being dragged by the Yamadutas before Yamaraj for punishment. But he was, because he called, even unconsciously or unintentionally, he called the name of the Supreme Lord Narayan, he was saved by the agents of Narayan. Then again, 6th canto, chapter 2. One who chants the holy name of the Lord is immediately freed from reactions of unlimited sins, even if he chants indirectly, though there's 4 types. Sanketya is what a Jamila did. Sanketya. That's indirectly or intending something else. He was intending to call his son, who he named Narayan. And when he was calling his son, Narayan, indirectly or intending something else, he called Narayan. So Narayan's agents came. And parihasya means joking. Unless you've been on Harinam Sankirtan, you probably don't have experience of that one, but it happens all the time. People see the chanting and hear the chanting, and they go, ha ha ha, Hare Krishna. So by saying, even in a joking manner, there's benefit, enormous benefit, immediately freed from the reactions of unlimited sins, immediately. That's pretty good. The last time I presented this, I told the whole story. I'll tell the whole story. It's a nice story. The deities of Radha Govinda that were given by the Queen of Jaipur to Prabhupada and installed at a pandal in Jaipur, in that courtyard of the king's palace, were, by Prabhupada's direction, sent to New York. So they were installed in the temple in Brooklyn, Henry Street Temple, celebrated place. And the place was a rented building, and it was a double brownstone building, which means that's one side identical with the other. You know, now it's like townhouses, but it was double brownstone. So you walk up a little flight of steps, and there's the ground floor, and then the basement below that. On the left side was the temple room, and the right side was Prabhupada's quarters. And so it's right on the corner of Henry Street and whatever that other one, Cross Street, was. And on the opposite corner was a schoolyard, an elementary school, with a big wrought iron fence, 10 feet tall, so the kids couldn't climb out or people couldn't come in. And, you know, a playground outside the schoolyard and outside the school. So when we went after breakfast, morning program, breakfast, first thing, Mridang's cartels, and off to the subway to go into the city for Harinam. And when we came back, we would continue Harinam until we got to the temple from the subway. And as we were going by the schoolyard, it was also lunchtime for the kids. So they would line up, because we were very regular and so were they, and they would taunt and tease and laugh at us as we went by. Every day, every day, every day. And then summer came, Prabhupada visited, and at the end of one class, Trivikram Swami stood up. I remember very clearly. He stood up, not just raised his hand, but he stood up, said, Prabhupada, when those children in that schoolyard over there make fun of us, is that an offense to the holy name? Immediately Prabhupada said, no, that's very good. Now he didn't explain this verse, but that's what the verse says, parihasya. And it happened every day when school was on. So many years later, 20-something years later, I was traveling through an airport, waiting for a departure of a plane, and down a long corridor came a group of Northwest Airlines employees. It was in Detroit, where Northwest was the hub there. And they were laughing really loud, carrying on. And when they got right to the gate where I was waiting, one of them stopped, told the others to keep moving. It came right in front of me, and looked at me like I was a ghost or something, and said, are you Hare Krishna? I said, yeah. And he went, oh, no. I said, what's wrong? And he said, when I was young, I used to live in Brooklyn. I said, I used to live in Brooklyn too, for a while. And when we were kids, we were really bad. And we were, when you came back playing your cymbals and drums and singing, we would laugh at you and make fun. And I said, I lived in that temple. I remember. So he was one of the kids in the schoolyard. He said, oh, no. He said, we were really bad. We would throw rocks through your windows, and when you left your cars parked on the street, somebody would set the cars on fire to tell you, we want these parking places. So we had to go rent a place in a warehouse area, not too far. We were really bad. You people were always really nice. You fed people. No matter what we did, you were still very kind. And but that melody, it just somehow stuck in my mind. That Hare Krishna, like that. I would just remember the melody. And even just today, when we got out of work, there was that melody, and I started singing the melody. And you know what? My fellow employees, they started laughing at me, just like we used to laugh at you. And then I saw you, and I said, oh, no. But, you were always good to people, and so, the parting words were, so please keep it up. It's really good what you're doing for everybody. You'd feed people. Your music is nice, and please continue. So I just took it as, here was my two takeaways. One was, this is Krishna speaking through this man. We should continue doing what we've been doing. Public Harinam Sankirtan. And the second was, just see the power of the holy name. Just see the power of the holy name. The melody was in his mind for 20 years. Now, it wasn't our intention that we're going God and Harinam, and the people that hear it are going to, for 20 years, going to have the melody going through their mind. But for him, it was. And he was getting this parihasya benefit. Immediately freed from the reactions of unlimited sins. Joking. Or musical entertainment. This is a little personal story. The second time that I heard the Hare Krishna mantra was in the music room of the Millard Fillmore room, the music room of the student center. Because I had heard chanting of Hare Krishna from somebody else who was a man that had gone to India and had, become a yogi and was traveling around in the colleges and chanting Hare Krishna. It was an impersonalist. I didn't know the difference, and so some attraction for the holy name. And then I found out that in the musical, Broadway musical, Hair, towards the end, because it was a parody on the counterculture of the 60s. So there was they had a group of people with skull caps and playing tambourines and cymbals and chanting Hare Krishna on stage in the Broadway musical. So I went to the music room, checked out the album regularly, went into one of the rooms and just listened to that song over and over again. And it was just musical. Stobha, musical. Powerful. I mean, they weren't devotees. They weren't meaning to glorify Krishna, but they were doing music. And neglectfully, that's the one that we do all the time. Helanam, the mouth is going and the mind is somewhere else. Neglectfully. But that's Abbas. Abbas. Nam Abbas. However, even Nam Abbas, one who chants the holy name of the Lord, even in Nam Abbas, these are enormous benefits that come. So that's Canto 6, Chapter 2. Canto 2, Chapter 1. Etan Nividyamananam, celebrated verse. This is the set of verses when Shukadeva Goswami first starts to speak. The very first words that he speaks in the whole of the Bhagavatam. O King, Parikshit, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all. Ichatam akutobayam, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. Now this message is very similar to another verse that comes later in the second canto, where Shukadeva Goswami says, Akama sarvakamo va mokshakama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Celebrated verse. But this is now specifically about the holy name, the constant chanting of the holy name. Doubtless and fearless way of success for everybody. Persons absorbed in material existence, people who have no material existence, and people who are self-satisfied, the Atmarama people. It's a most perfect medicine or prescription for everyone. Canto 2, Chapter 1. On that verse, Shritar Swami comments, there is no method more beneficial than singing the Lord's names, both for practitioners and for those who have already attained perfection. For those desiring material enjoyment, singing the Lord's names is the very means by which their desires can be fulfilled. For those who seek liberation, this alone is the means of salvation. And for those who seek knowledge of the Absolute, this also has been determined as the goal. By saying that this has already been concluded, it indicates that there is no need for further evidence in this regard. Here is 1st Canto, Chapter 6, Narada Muni speaking about his previous life. Thus I began chanting the holy name and fame of the Lord by repeated recitation ignoring all the formalities of the material world. Such chanting and remembering of transcendental pastimes of the Lord are benedictory. So doing, I travel all over the earth, fully satisfied, humble, and unenvious. Narada speaking to Vyas, describing his previous life. Canto 3, Chapter 33. This is another often quoted verse, Aho bata swapachoto guriyan. Nama is in the last line. Brahmanuchur nama granantiyete. Oh, how glorious are they whose tongues are chanting your holy name. Even if born in the families of dog-eaters, such persons are worshipable. Persons who chant the holy name of your Lordship must have executed all kinds of austerities and fire sacrifices and achieved all the good manners of the Aryans. To be chanting the holy name of your Lordship, they must have bathed at holy places of pilgrimage, studied the Vedas, and fulfilled everything required. That is to say, the name delivers all these benefits. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is pictured here. By chant, this is part of continued on the next page. By chanting the holy name of the Supreme Lord, one comes to the stage of love of Godhead. Then the devotee is fixed in his vow as an eternal servant of the Lord, and he gradually becomes very much attached to a particular name and form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As his heart melts with ecstatic love, he laughs very loudly or cries and shouts. Sometimes he sings and dances like a madman, for he is indifferent to public opinion. This verse was spoken by Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master. The name of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master? Ishwara Puri. So after Lord Chaitanya was initiated into the chanting of the holy name by Ishwara Puri, Lord Chaitanya became like a madman. And after some time, he went back and said, am I doing something wrong? This and that and the other thing starts to happen. And Ishwara Puri said, oh, very good. And quoted this verse, saying this is a symptom of a very advanced stage of devotion. You're entering into the realm of prema bhakti. Very good. Continue. There's Krishna, of course. And here's the emphasis for this next few slides is that phrase, Nija Sarva Shaktis. Nija Sarva Shaktis means all. Nija means his own, and Sarva Shaktis means his own spiritual potencies. Nam Namakari Bahuda. There's many, many, many names. And each one of those names, Nija Sarva Shaktis, is invested with all of his transcendental potencies. Here's the translation. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. Here's the phrase. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. All your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. So, Nija Sarva Shaktis. The holy name has all spiritual potency. The holy name is Nija Sarva Shaktis. All spiritual potencies in each and every one of Krishna's names. So, this is some glorification of the name. This is a nice mandala, yes? Here's the text that goes with it. By producing the gross sound of the mantra and hearing, we change sound on a more subtle level, on the level of thought, then on the level of desire, And ultimately we experience something beyond this material existence on a transcendental platform. So it penetrates layers of consciousness, eventually to the experience of Krishna. So one might wonder, if this Maha Mantra is so potent and it can award the whole spiritual world, who needs anything else? Why Srimad Bhagavatam? What's the big deal? This is another celebrated verse by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur summarizing Lord Chaitanya's teachings. That's what's in the last line. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhur matam idam tatra dara na paraha. Or this is understood by learned scholars as the essence of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. So let's go. Aradyo Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanyas. Vraja Isha Tanaya. The Supreme Personality Godhead Lord Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, is worshipped along with his transcendental abode of Vrindavan, Tadama Vrindavanam. The most pleasing form of worship of the Lord is that which was performed by the gopis of Vrindavan. Ramya kadachit upasana vrajavadu vargena va kalpita. Then, in red letters, Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam. The Bhagavatam is the pramana, or authority, or evidence. Amalam, spotless, on everything. And pure love of God, it is the ultimate goal of life for all men. Prema Pumarto Mahan. These statements, for which we have the highest regard, are opinions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, kind of summarizing Lord Chaitanya and his teachings in a very celebrated verse. Particularly, we're taking note of the Srimad Bhagavatam Pramana Amalam, Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam, composed by Vyas, but it's the spotless authority of describing Krishna. This is a nice painting, or it's a painting of a painting, depicting the person who you see in the front. The foreground of the painting is the king in Orissa at the time of Lord Chaitanya. His name was King Prataparudra. King Prataparudra commissioned an artist to paint a painting of him with Lord Chaitanya and his associates. Now one might think, if you're the king and you wanted a painting, you'd have Lord Chaitanya in Sankirtan. But this is what the painting is. It's a painting of all the associates of Lord Chaitanya hearing Gadadhar Pandit recite Srimad Bhagavatam, which he did daily. So the person reciting in the center there, that's Gadadhar, and behind him with the shaved head, that's Lord Chaitanya, and next to him is Lord Nityananda, and the person in the corner up there with the beard, that's Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And there are others in this painting. The two principal associates of Lord Chaitanya, Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy, they're behind Gadadhar Pandit. On the opposite side is Vikreshwara Pandit and one other devotee. Standing up there with the beard, with his palms folded on the right side, that's Haridas. And there's a nice peacock in the far lower right corner. So it is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita that together Lord Chaitanya would hear with others the message of Srimad Bhagavatam every day from Gadadhar Pandit for hours, every day. And he especially, it says, he especially liked hearing the stories of Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj. And he heard them hundreds of times, again and again. because the topics of the Bhagavatam are meant to be relished like that, in the association of others, and hear it again and hear it again and hear it again. So because in that way the meaning enters your heart. The message and the mood and everything enters your heart. So that's Srimad Bhagavatam glorification. Prabhupada wrote this in the introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam. In the modern age, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu preached Srimad Bhagavatam by practical demonstration. It is easier to penetrate into the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam through the medium of Sri Chaitanya's causeless mercy. This is Bhaktisiddhanta. There are 3 slides, important, so listen carefully. The kirtan culture widespread in Bengal had sprung from Lord Chaitanya's propagating Harir Nama Eva Kevalam, misunderstanding of which has led to underemphasis of the importance of Shravanam, or hearing Hari Katha. This is a section in a book on teachings given by Bhaktisiddhanta called Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav, and this is a subsection, Hearing Hari Katha. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati revealed that Hari Katha is the Sarup Shakti of Harinam. So Harinam is the person, and the Sarup Shakti of the person is Hari Katha. It's a nice image. There's Krishna with a set of beads around him. Over on the right side, that's Vyas compiling the Bhagavatam. Here's his statement. Just as Krishna is properly worshipped not alone, but with his Sarup Shakti Sri Radha, recitation of Harinam is incomplete and improper unless accompanied by hearing Hari Katha. We don't worship Krishna alone, we worship Radha Krishna. And we don't just have kirtan, that's Krishna. But we hear Hari Katha, that's the Sarup Shakti of Krishna. They go together, Radha and Krishna. Hearing from the text of Srimad Bhagavatam is considered the most important process of hearing. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of transcendental chanting of the holy name, and therefore the chanting and hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam are transcendently full of mellows. This is from the section of the Bhagavatam where Prahlad Maharaj is speaking to his father, Hiranyakashipu, who wanted to know what's the best thing he's learned from his teachers. He says that the 9 processes of bhakti. That's the best thing I've heard from didn't say Narada, best thing I've learned from my teachers. So of the 9 processes, one of them is kirtanam, and the best form of kirtanam, shravanam, is hearing Bhagavatam. Of course, hearing the holy name as well. But when you hear Bhagavatam, you're hearing the holy name. How many times during this talk has Krishna's name been mentioned? Here's the Atmarama verse, celebrated, Canto 1, Chapter 7, Text 8 or something like that. Atmaramas chamunayo nirgrantha api arukrame. All different varieties of Atmaramas, those who take pleasure in the Atma or spirit self, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the personality of God. That this means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls. The liberated souls, or the Atmarama personalities, they're not interested in anything material, but they're interested in the Bhagavatam, which means the Bhagavatam is not material. Very logical. Confirmed, right? So who's in the painting? This is Krishna, who's come to the cottage where Vyasadeva was residing, and poor wife of Vyasadeva, she was pregnant with Shukadeva Goswami for 16 years, and so Vyasadeva went all the way by foot from his cottage to Dwaraka to request Krishna to come. Krishna came, And he promised Shukadeva, it's okay, you can come out. You won't fall prey to Maya. So he came out. That's the painting. This is from Padma Purana, little story. You've heard of the city Gokarna? Yeah, Karnataka. Yes? You know your geography in India a little bit? Okay. You've heard of it. This, I'm going to share with you how Gokarna got the name Gokarna. Gokarna, during an earlier period of time, it was a city filled with brahmanas, seat of higher learning, and along the banks of the Tungabhadra River. And in that city, there was one brahmana named Atmadeva. And you know the story? You know the story. How do you know the story? Your mom told you. Okay. Okay. It's in Padma Purana. So Gokarna, Atmadeva was married to a Brahmani who was the kind of argumentative, complaining, grumpy type of personality. And he tolerated it because, that's what you're supposed to do, tolerate those things. But after some time, there was no son. So he was in anxiety about that. So he went to the forest to undergo austerities with the hopes that somehow he would get some benedictions that he would be able to have a son. While he was in the forest, when sannyasi came, and so I'm looking like, quite morose. He asked him, what's wrong? And he told him what's wrong. He said, not so much my wife, but there's no children. I have no son. So the sannyasi said, I can read your a chart and tell you whether you'll have a son or not. So he got the information. He did his calculations. He did some meditation, and he told Atmadeva, you're not going to have any sons for 7 lifetimes. So what you should do is just accept the renounced order of life so you don't have to be, absorbed in this lamentation thing. And, I got to have a son, So then the sannyasi told him the whole story of Chitraketu. You know the story of Chitraketu? Good for you. Chitraketu was a very pious king. Long story. I'll make it short. It's in the 6th canto Bhagavatam. No son, so he married another queen. No son, he married another queen. And by the end, he had a lot of queens. He had more queens than Krishna had. A really big number. 100,000 queens. So, no son. You would think you get the idea, okay, it's not meant to happen, right? Got to have a son. So, Angira Muni came to visit his kingdom. The king received him as a pious man will receive a sage. He asked him, what's wrong? You don't look so good. Is everything well in your kingdom, etc., etc.? Everything's well except I don't have a son. Angira could understand this man is too attached. So he said, I can perform a yajna whereby you'll have a son, but I'll tell you in advance, if we do this, the son will be both a source of misery and a source of happiness. And the king thought, well, so maybe the son will be a little disobedient, but better to have a son than the disobedient son than no son. So he agreed. So the yagya was performed, and he gave him a bowl of payasam, said, give this to your queen, and you'll have a son. And I'll give him a name ahead of time. His name is Harsha Shoka. Means happiness, distress. So that happened, and there was a son. And everything was nice now. Everything in the kingdom was already nice, and now there was a son. And everybody in the kingdom was happy, especially the king, except for his co-queens. So the 99,999 queens that had no son were envious, because all attention had gone to the queen that had the son. And as time passed, it got worse and worse and worse, and they started conspiring to murder the son. And they murdered the son. In the middle of his sleep, they administered poison. The son died. The next morning, the queen woke up. The next morning, the king woke up. They came running when they heard the nurses making noise, and son's dead. Right at the right time, Narada Muni and Angira Muni both come, and they give transcendental knowledge, because now he's ready to hear it, because before he wasn't, because he was too attached. And he became an elevated person. King Chitraketu story. So the sannyasi said, haven't you heard the King Chitraketu story? Here's the story. And you just to understand, it's not meant to happen. 7 lifetimes, no son. Oh, but you're a sannyasi, please do something. So the sannyasi agreed. The sannyasi gave him a mango, a magical mango, and said, you feed this to your wife and you'll have a son. But part of the condition is she has to undergo fasting for 1 year. That's a long time to fast. So he brought the mango back. Happy day, my good wife, here's the mango. She liked the idea of having a son, but she didn't like the idea of fasting for a year. So she confided in her sister. And her sister said, I've got a suggestion. I'm pregnant. You can tell everybody, your husband and everybody, that you ate the mango, and when my child is born, I'll give you my child. She liked the idea. And just out of curiosity, they gave the mango to a cow. In a short time, a few months, male child was born from the cow. But he had ears like a cow. So they called him Gokarna. Karna means ear and Go means cow. So a Brahmana, he was raised as a Brahmana that had ears looking like a cow. Gokarna. And then the child that was born of his wife, Atmadeva's wife, was just the opposite. He was really bad. Terribly bad. And then the two boys grew up, kind of like brothers, Gokarna, and the son's name, Dundukari. He was so bad. The father, Atmadev, tried and tried and tried to train him, useless. So Atmadeva left, went to the forest, underwent austerities, striving for liberation. Kind of like what was advised some time ago by the sannyasi. And his wife, she stayed with the son for some time, but he was so bad, she eventually gave up her life. She jumped in a well and drowned herself. So that left Dundukari, he's now a young man, alone in the house. And he didn't have an occupation because he was born a Brahmin, so instead what he did is he just became a thief. And after some time, he kept prostitutes in the house, and he was a bad guy. And he was such a bad guy that the agents of the king came and arrested him, tied him up, and set him on fire. He died. Dundakari died. And he became it says here ghost. There's another, preta. You heard that word before, preta? Preta is different than a bhuta. It's a preta. It's kind of like something like that. It's a phantom. That's how it's translated in English. So he associated with ghosts, and he was like, really in a miserable condition, without a gross body and so many sins. And so he went to his brother, kind of spooked him, and, pleaded with him, help me get free from sin. So his brother's name what's his brother's name? Gokarna. Very good. So Gokarna went to Gaya and did the proper rituals in Gaya. Nothing happened. Dundakari said, help, please do something. So Gokarna went to the sannyasis, said what to do. And the sannyasi said, you should worship the sun god. So he worshipped the sun god with great intensity, to the point where the sun god appeared and the sun god recommended, just recite Srimad Bhagavatam for a week and Dundakari's sins will be gone. So he did that for a whole week, morning till evening. On the seventh day, at the end of the recitation of the Bhagavatam, Dundakari left his preta body. A vimana descended from Vaikuntha and raised him to that vimana and took him to the spiritual world. And as he was departing, Gokarna said, well, wait a minute. How come all the other people assembled here didn't get the same benefit that you got? And the answer, before he departed, was, I was listening very intently. I was absorbed because I was in so much misery. I wanted relief from my misery. And so the people that were assembled there, having seen Dundakari go to Vaikuntha, they said, let's do it again. We'll listen very carefully this time. So that's what this image shows. Gokarna helped Dundakari release from a ghostly body and attain the spiritual world just by reciting Srimad Bhagavatam to him and the others who were assembled there. Here's Canto 2, Chapter 2, about the Bhagavatam. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life, known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. Another one, 2.8.4. Persons who hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly and are always taking the matter very seriously will have the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, manifested in their hearts within a short time. Bhagavan Vishate Hridi. So you get the idea. The Bhagavatam is very special. One who, with undeviating attention, constantly recites this literature at every moment of every hour, as well as one who faithfully hears even one verse, or a half a verse, or simply a single line, or even a half a line, certainly purifies his very self. So, they have these two that are compatible and mutually beneficial. Harinam cleanses envy, which is the root cause of all anarthas. By chanting Krishna's holy name, one cleanses all the dust from the mirror of one's consciousness. Nice illustration. Good. It's like an advertisement, a little spray bottle, spraying the holy name on a mirror, and there's Krishna on the other side. Nirmatsaranam satam. That's a verse in the 2nd chapter of Canto 1. This Srimad Bhagavatam has such potency. This is a little drawing of the 6 Goswamis associating together and discussing, guess what? Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the conclusion. On the one side, on the left side there's the holy name. Sri Nama purifies and allows one to enter deeper into Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam bestows deeper conviction in Sri Nam. And here's our last slide. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Hari, the congregational chanting of whose name, holy names, destroys all sinful reactions, and the offering obeisances unto whom relieves all material suffering. This is Prabhupada before the deities of Radha, London, Ishwara at the Bhaktivedanta Manor. Very nice place. Very nice deities, very merciful deities. So there's our topic and mutually supportive roles of Sri Nam and Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's go back to this. Sri Nam purifies and allows one to enter deeper into Srimad Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam bestows deeper conviction in Sri Nam. Can you see the screen? Yeah? Wow, you can see my computer screen? You can see that one. You got mirrors or something? You can watch it, okay. It's curved, maybe that helps. Okay, so is any discussion? There's a nice assembly here. So there's a question all the way in the back.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, can you speak on the way of chanting, like chanting with the lips, making sound and then hearing with the ears, or chanting in the mind? So
Hearing, please. Hearing.
But can you elaborate a little more?
Chanting silently within the mind is a process. Haridas Thakur says that chanting aloud is much more beneficial. And one of the reasons he gives is when you chant aloud, then other living entities will hear and they're benefited. So it's not only your benefit, but their benefit, so chant aloud. Then there's another explanation that says, Prabhupada saying, when you chant aloud, it helps to capture the mind. So instead of just meditating in the mind, chant aloud and the mind will be captured. Because you try chanting in the mind only, and it's even more difficult than chanting aloud, how the mind will wander. It's a big topic, but those are some small points, important points. The former temple president in Houston, his name is Shyamsundar also. Do you know Shyamsundar? Okay. So he sent me about 4 days ago, a document which Radhika transcribed, And it's Bhaktivinoda Thakur describing his chanting. It is certainly audible, but it's, it's with a spiritual tongue and a spiritual ear. So I'll forward that to, you can forward it to the group. No, I edited it because some of it was a little needed improvement. You send me a text message right now, and I'll forward it to another Chaitanya who can forward it to everybody here. It's very nice. When I was in transit in the San Diego airport, Vaisheshika Prabhu sent me welcome to San Jose. I said, I'm in transit, but I'll send you some nectar. So I sent him this text. I said, nectar. It's very nice. It's, it's his realization, it's his experience of chanting. It's very nice. It's another level of chanting, but it's not just, it's certainly audible, not just in the mind. Okay? Hare Krishna. Yes.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I have 3 questions. So first question is, when you chant, there are 2 kind of chanting, quality of chanting and mechanical chanting. So when it comes
Quality of chanting, and what's the other?
routine chanting, mechanical
Routine.
chanting. So when it comes, as you mentioned that we know that chanting minimize karma. So when we do, what's the difference between if we do quality of chanting, does our karma gets minimized more compared to doing the routine chanting?
No. Karma is reduced. Karma is eliminated regardless. But what's the more is love of God.
Okay. And my second question is, Maharaj, that you just mentioned that parihas, parihas for holy name. Who does parihas for holy name? In next life, they also got agya sukriti?
It's not just a Gyata Sukriti. It's a Gyata Sukriti plus. Because a Gyata Sukriti, it's Abhas Bhakti, it's not a Gyata Sukriti. So here's the distinction. A Gyata Sukriti is unknowingly doing something. Like just say you're looking for something. So now we have GPS, but it's a common thing is you stop at a gas station. Which way to such and such place? And they say, oh, you go this way, that way. So they're unknowingly they're assisting a devotee. A Gyata Sukriti. And a Gyata Sukriti plus a Gyata Sukriti piled up, and eventually, knowingly they engage in devotional service. Okay? And that's different than Abbas Bhakti, or Abbas Namabas, or Bhakti Abbas. Different.
And my last question, Guru Maharaj, that there's no difference between Krishna's name and Krishna himself, as we keep hearing that. So, but I'm just curious to know that Prabhupada always says that don't hear from person who's not coming from, don't hear from non-devotee, Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Non-devotee.
It's like a snake touching a serpent touching a milk. So what is the meaning? Why did Prabhupada mention like that way? What is the significance of this?
What's the significance?
Yes.
There's degrees. Hearing from one who's offensive is like poison. And hearing from someone who's not offensive is not poison. It's Abbas. Listening to the musical cast of hair chant Hare Krishna, it's not poison. But the poison is one who is explicitly an offender of Krishna. Like an impersonalist. The impersonalists also chant Hare Krishna. I mean, that was my first exposure. There was somebody traveling around chanting Hare Krishna, and he was saying, "Become one with the name." I thought, wow, that's cool. What does that mean? And then as I attended further and further, he explained and said at the beginning, there's you and the chant, and you and the chant. And then eventually it's just a chant. And then I realized what he was saying. He said, you become Krishna. I said, forget this guy. I'm not going any further with this. But that's offense. It's different than this other. Okay?
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. Up front. You have something.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Maharaj, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So how to spot indifference in my chanting? Do you have any recommendations, practical exercise, Maharaj? That would be helpful.
Yeah. Listen to your question. Your question was one of the main classes that during the Festival of Holy Name, the title of it is Indifference. Listen to that, you get it. You get a lot of answers. It's common and it's critical to overcome that.
My other question is that I was studying Ajamela story in Srimad Bhagavatam. There Prabhupada writes, although Ajamela chanted Narayana's name with not pure intention, he chanted offenselessly. Offenseless means pure chanting, right? But Prabhupada writes, offenseless
No.
means not pure.
It was Abbas. It wasn't Nam Aparad, it was Nam Abbas. That's how you should understand what he wrote. It wasn't, there's beginning, intermediate, and advanced. Beginning is offensive, Aparad. And Abbas is the intermediate stage. And Shuddha is Shuddha. And there's no offense in Shuddha, but there's no offense in the Abbas stage, but it's not pure yet. Okay?
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my obeisances. Maharaj, what is the significance of chanting on the beads versus probably chanting with other means? Sometimes, people have these counters also these days.
Don't use counters. But the significance of chanting on beads is two things. Sacred Tulsi. The second reason is counting. You can keep a vrata of how many mantras you chant just by moving the beads. A third reason is the sense of touch is also connected with the ear and the tongue to help fix the mind. When you are accomplished at chanting, I can say this. I've been chanting for a number of years now. Just by putting my hands on my beads, there's something that happens. From so many hours and years of chanting on beads, it's just, physiology is hardwired now. It's a connection just by touching the beads. So that's the, and it's not just Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. In all religions, there's the same principle. In Catholic Church and Islam faith and Buddhist faith, they have beads. It's to help concentration. And the counting. What to speak of, Tulsi? You have something else, I can tell.
And Maharaj, one other thing is, many times we are, due to other reasons, we are not able to complete our chanting in the morning. So can we just walk out in the open and with amongst people and do our chanting?
I would hope so. Is something stopping you from doing that?
Oh, my wife.
I don't want to get into a domestic thing.
No, I mean, that was just a laugh.
Ideal is, just in a quiet place you chant. But you can, you can go in the public and chant too. Go in a park or, someone asked me this. They live in New Jersey and near where their home is, there's a lake. Is it okay? You probably would go for japa walks. In the public, anyway. You have something further because there's somebody behind you, right next to you, left shoulder. There we go.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. This is like the question I wanted to ask for a really, really long time. I wanted to write an email even to you. Actually, Ramananda Saka Prabhu told me to write an email, but
Okay, just keep it short. What is it? What's the question?
doing the chanting for almost like 8 years, 7-8 years.
Wow,
And I've been
you're a hero.
and I've been trying to do 16 rounds. I
And
could never perfect it. I will do it like I finished my numbers. So at one point, like my wife even told me, instead of doing 16 rounds like this, just do one round, but do it nicely, sitting in front of the temple.
Not while driving.
And I would like try to drive it, and then I would complete my 16 rounds somehow. So should I stop doing that and just do one round, which I can?
In front of the temple or which for something.
So that's my question.
it's another domestic landmine. I surrender. I suggest that you get better at time management. And one of the ways to ensure that you get better at time management is how you prioritize things, you manage time. And that sets time management. So I call it blocks of time. Makes 24. And so how much time do I need for 16? And you set that time. Rather than having a domestic, dispute. Or, feeling unfulfilled because you're not at 16, so you got to do it while you're driving. Now, I know some people that to maintain their family, they would drive taxi. And they didn't have time otherwise. They have to get up early, and it's a whole long day, and they're exhausted and so on. Now, there may be exceptions like that, but if to make it a rule is not good. Well, who doesn't? Who doesn't? But if you have a priority, busy people know how to manage their time. Lazy people don't. The busy people know how to manage their time. You manage your time by priority. That's what you're busy doing, priority things. That's what busy people do. So you manage your time management. And you prioritize.
Thank you.
And here's 2 other tips. The best way to prioritize your time such that you chant 16 every day is you do it first thing in the morning before all the other stuff happens. Because if you don't do it then, it gets, it's sloppy. It's qualitatively less, and sometimes it just falls off the radar. So do it in the morning. And then that's one. Then to do it in the morning, you have to take rest on time. So that your body is sufficiently rested, so you can get up in the morning and you're fresh. And you make the outside clean, you make the inside clean. And that's it. Once you start doing that, when you do that, you'll wonder how I lived my life before that. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Now, is it okay? Kirtaniya Sadahari. You know that phrase, right? It's a Kirtaniya Sada. It's Shikshastika. So chant always. What about when you're driving? So if you want to chant when you're driving, chant when you're driving. Chant when you're asleep. It's a little hard to chant when you're brushing your teeth. But, Kirtaniya Sadahari. But, ideally, it's not part of your 16. It's just part of Sadahari. If there's circumstance, there's a devotee in a traveling Sankirtan devotee, I won't mention his name, and he's like a very intense person, and he chants while driving, because he's going from this Sankirtan spot to that Sankirtan spot. The other persons in his party don't like to do that, but he likes, because he likes to do Sankirtan. So he's not the kind of person you can rewire him. He's just wired. So he chants when he drives. When he's not driving, he's in one place, he doesn't do that. Is this possible? It's not ideal. No, better to chant one round than any other rounds when you're chanting. Better you chant 24/7, including when you're in sleep. Or chant in your mind when you're brushing your teeth. But 16 is when you're focused. One of the offenses in chanting is inattention, right? It's in fact, it's the one that's the root of all the others. So when you're driving, do you have to pay attention while you're driving? So your attention is distracted from chanting because you're driving. So when you're chanting, best is you're not doing other stuff. I was visiting someone's home. I won't, and the man of the house was out watering his garden while chanting his japa in the early morning. I said, please don't do that because it's distracted. You're doing truth. It's saving time because he wants to water the garden. But it's sloppy chanting. So, leverage your life priority-wise to quality chanting. You got to start sometime. So why do it later? Start. And it's time management. Okay, we have something over here.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
One question, Swami. In fact, two. I'll start with the first one. I presume you might have read Bhagavatam so many times. Each and every time when you read it, what new thing comes out? How do you feel it?
That's in Krishna's hand. What and how and all that. It's just a relationship, and it comes, and it depends on what's in Krishna's hand. That's how it is.
Super. The next follow-up question is Ajamila Upakyanam. Ajamila story.
Yeah.
Yes. So, what I understood is when the Vishnupada, Vishnu Sevakas, when they came to answer Yamadharmaraja's followers, saying that, okay, this person hasn't done any mistake after reciting Narayana Mantram, Narayana Namam at that point.
And that's not what they said. Because when he was, after his son was born and he named him Narayan, he was still doing bad stuff. But he was, even before the moment of death, he was saying, Narayan,
Narayana.
Narayan, Narayan,
Yep.
come here, come take your meal,
Yes.
Narayan, let's go for a walk, Narayan, Narayan,
Yep.
Narayan. So he was still doing sinful stuff. So that's not what they said. But by chanting even once in this Abbas unintentional manner, he was free from sin, because that's what Namabas does. Now, carry on with your question.
No, actually, I mean, like, the question is like, they say Mahamrityu Kalam is like the last part of the life where if a person can recite Bhagavan Namam, any Namam, that entitles them to go to Lord Sri Mahavishnu or Lord Krishna, and then join him.
Yes,
But,
correct.
But yeah, when they say that, I mean, like, to get to that point is where your chanting helps us every day, chanting every day.
You got it.
That's what the story is like. I mean, like, whatever the name you recite.
Well, it's not that story is indicating something else. That story is indicating Abbas chanting.
Mhm.
And another inference is, if you or anyone want to get to the stage of your mind is on the name at the time of death and it comes out your mouth, practice now.
Yeah.
His wasn't practice. I mean, at the time of death, I want to be able to say Narayan and the Vaikuntavasis will come and rescue me. That's not what he was
Yeah,
doing.
no, I agree.
Two different things.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Prabhu.
Where's our microphone person? Up front.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So my question is with regards to the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He listened to specifically Dhruva's pastime and Prahlad Maharaj's pastime many times. I always wondered that Canto 10 section is where the Vrajavasis come into play, and Mahaprabhu's mood will be like that.
It doesn't say that he didn't listen to Canto 10.
Uh-huh.
He says he regularly listened to those two stories.
Right.
Don't extrapolate too much.
Okay, got it. Is there any specific reason, Maharaj, why those specific pastimes, or?
He liked them. They're
And-
pure devotees. He liked hearing pure devotees.
Okay.
That's all. Don't make too much of it.
Okay, that's why I'm asking that question.
I'm responding.
And so the next question is with regards to Chitraketu Maharaj. I just see a parallel to Dhruva Maharaj's pastime where Uttanapada, he was not favoring Dhruva. And here also we see that, he has to be equal to his wives, right?
He had to be what?
Equal.
Equal?
Yeah, equal.
Who had to be?
Chitraketu, he had 100,000 wives and he had to treat them equally. Just because Harshashok was born to his first wife, he was treating her so nicely and left the other wives. I understand the part where he got envious, where the wives got envious because of...
They were neglected.
They were neglected. Isn't it wrong from Chitraketu Maharaj's side also to neglect his wives completely?
Yeah. Is your question, was there a mistake on the part of the king to neglect his other co-wives? Yes.
Yes, but we always talk about the wives and we leave Chitraketu Maharaj also neglecting, in the sense...
Yeah, but not to the degree that he didn't even speak anything on behalf of Dhruva. He could have said so many things, but he didn't, because if I speak something in support of Dhruva or reprimand my wife for speaking harshly, she may not like me, and I'll lose her favor.
Yeah.
He was attached blind.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm good, Maharaj. Thank you.
Now, just a comment on why Lord Chaitanya, was there something special? I'm sure you've read, but I like reading those two stories. And Prahlad Maharaj specifically says in his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev that you sent me here to this world to teach pure devotional service. Say it again. Prahlad says to Lord Nrsingadev in his prayers, Canto 7, Chapter 10, you sent me here to teach the way of pure devotional service. So Lord Chaitanya liked pure devotional service. I mean, it's not to say that the Brijbasis in Canto 10 are not pure devotees, but he's giving the teaching of attaining pure devotional service. And Dhruva went from Sakam to Nishkam Bhakti. So that's very significant. And others, yeah, those are the significances. They're pure devotees, and the pure devotees of the Lord are very much appreciated by any Vaishnav. Anything else? Do we have anything online? Can we go online? Can you give him the microphone?
2 questions, Maharaj. 2 questions. One is from Sridhar Das. Guru Maharaj, sometimes I hear from other faith people that holy, in quotes, holy name should not be taken in vain. My question is there any time that holy name should not be taken? What does vain mean here?
Vilification, that's what it means.
Okay. Next question, Maharaj. Next question is from Shyama Gopika Devidasi. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisance. What is the best way to scrutinizingly study Srimad Bhagavatam?
Under a teacher. Those 2 people are from Singapore. I guess the time zone works for them. Anything over here?
You just mentioned learning Bhagavatam under a teacher. Now, how do we have access to your lectures. So
I'm not doing systematic Bhakti Shastri or Bhakti Vaibhav. You can listen to the lectures, but studying, the question was, what's the best way? To systematically study, that was the question. Under a teacher, they systematically teach for those who want systematic study.
Okay. So joining a Bhakti Vaibhav is the right way to do it.
Well, that's not what I said. What's the best way? There's many right ways. But yeah, if you want a systematic study, that's the best way. Sign up. Bhakti for Bhagavatam, or whatever the texts are, then find a good curriculum and teachers, and go for it. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.